Hi, I'm going to try to help my AP Computer Science students do well on the free response section of the exam. And they can go to my homepage and find the past questions of that exam. And today we're going to do question number 1 off of the 2011 free response section. So by finding it somewhere on the web or clicking this link, you might have to log in to the College Board website to reveal this test packet. And printing this out or scrolling down, whatever, I'm going to show you how to, let's think out and do question number 1. So here it is in this document here, and I'm going to pretend that I'm seeing this for the first time. It might take you 10 to 15 minutes to understand what they're trying to get you to do, and that's fine. Don't be under pressure to write code right away. You have an hour and 45 minutes to do pretty much like 10 methods, and you have plenty of time for each method. Well, part A here is to fill in the implementation code for this method right here. We're in a sound class, we're filling in this method, and we have this instance variable, also known as a property. We have that available to us to use. There may be other things that exist in this class, but they're not useful because we don't know what they are. And part B, you never use the method that eventually will be an answer on your exam as part of part A. It never works that reverse way. You might end up using part A and calling this method as part of your answer in part B, but never vice versa. So we have this array of integers called samples to use, and we have this method along with its parameters. So I'm going to forward here to the second page of the exam where they actually explain this some more in this paragraph. And here is the area where I can fill in my answer. And let's go for it. Well, I recommend that you underline the names of the variables or parameters that you're allowed to use. And we only have one parameter here. So even before we read this question, know that in your final answer here, inside these curly braces for this method, limit better show up somewhere. And also notice that you're returning an int. Maybe you want to double underline that. So before we go any further, in pencil of course, just write return, I don't know, return 1. Or better yet, return -1, because sometimes you have to return -1 if you didn't find something. Then at least you'll get the half point, or maybe the full point, that they give you on the rubric for knowing to return something. Of course, if this return type was void, you would not put return something there. Okay, now let's get to work. After reading through this, you might want to circle things that seem important, like greater than, replaced with. That's probably going to be an equal symbol, an assignment statement somewhere. The greater than will probably be a greater than symbol. It could be the dot compare to method if these were strings or objects, but because these are whole numbers, it's probably going to be a greater than symbol that this greater than translates to. Hey, and there's a less than. You'll probably be using a less than. It doesn't say less than or equal to, it says less than. And what else is important? Hey, it returns the total number of things. Well, maybe we're going to be doing a plus equals. Maybe somewhere we're going to be adding up a bunch of things. Maybe, maybe not. So there's some evidence in this English pseudocode of what we're going to be doing in our code. And now, of course, we can look at this example that they gave us. Now, this code here that they're suggesting will be called or executed somewhere. Well, this must be in a client program because we're calling the method or somewhere else in the class where we happen to find ourselves writing code. So this line of code is just showing how the limit amplitude method will be called and some value will be returned from it and could eventually plug in for some variable called numChanges or whatever. Okay, so this paragraph has been read and absorbed by me. I also realized that A lot of times they just take that big chunk of wording and they just restate it more compactly as their pre and post conditions here, right above the method. And now let's begin. Chances are, if you're doing question 1A or 1B on the AP exam, you'll need a loop. And a for loop is generally what you'd be using. Sometimes it's a while loop, and a lot of times you can use either one. So maybe you just want to flesh out your loop, and often in a for loop, this should be very easy for you. You better know how to write a for loop on the day of the AP exam. We often use the variable I. You do have to declare it, and often I starts at 0 and I plus pluses and goes by ones. Not always, but often. These are semicolons here. So I'm just going to plug in for now in pencil my equals 0 and I plus plus. Now usually you go from left to right through an array. So you start at position 0, which you might want to write in your position numbers here on the test paper itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And the name of that array is whatever the name of the property was in this class. So in this particular problem that we're doing from 2011, in the sound class, we have an array named samples, an array of integers. That's the array that we're talking about. So maybe you just even want to write the word samples there, just to help you stay focused. Of course, the length of this array is 14. You're not going to be doing I less than 14, because this should work for any sized array. Rarely do they have you hardwire magic numbers into your algorithm. Only do this as a resort of desperation. No, instead we probably either use the variable, a parameter there like limit, or the length of the array. And arrays, of course, we know have a length property. So it's samples.length, not samples.size, because only if this were an array list would you have .size here. So this, again, is usually a point in the rubric to even know that. Don't overthink this. It's usually less than length. Don't put a -1 or a +1 here. Unless there's something else tricky going on, it's normally I less than whatever the name of the array is .length. Okay, now the hard part. What are we supposed to do anyway? You see, I did this much just on basic pattern finding on the AP exam and just basic knowledge of algorithms and basic data structures like arrays. A for loop with a return. Now, if we're doing a sequential search, I bet we'll need an if statement and either a return inside the if statement or something plus plus or something plus equals and then returning something else. So we might need an if statement, and we might need an extra variable here like x. Let's not get fancy with names here. This is the AP exam. They don't grade you on style, so just do whatever it takes to get it done in the time that you have. Well, are we counting up something and returning it? Yes, we're returning the number of values that this method changed. So let's keep that count, and let's just, I don't know, store it in the variable c and start that count at 0. This is a local variable. Don't go sticking private in front of this. This is a local variable and a method just being used to get a job done. This is not a property of a class, instance variable, or anything like that. Leave room here. We might need more variables as we think this out. Well, when we start I at 0, and feel free to trace this algorithm as you go, when I starts at 0 here, that means we're looking at the 40. And to refer to that 40, don't use substring. Come on, that would mean that you have strings in your array, and there's no talk of strings in this question. Substring is not allowed on this problem. And don't use index of. That's a string method also. And don't use that method something.get. That's an array list method. Again, they'll take a point or half a point off for that mistake. No, with old-fashioned arrays, you use square brackets. And 9 times out of 10, in your square brackets, you put your index variable that you're using as your loop variable in your for loop. So something square brackets I, and what's the something? Oh yeah, I remember. The name of this array is samples, because that was the name of the instance variable in the sound class. So we have samples, excuse my sloppy handwriting here, but we have samples, square brackets I. And we need to compare that to limit, because all of the values up here in this array that are greater than limit, need to be, well, something needs to be done to them. They need to be changed to limit. So let's find, let's pretend that the limit is, 2,000. Let's pretend that the parameter that's passed in for limit here is 2,000, like the sample. So let's pretend the parameter is 2,000. Let's trace this. And let's find a number in the array that's greater than 2,000. Oh, up here, the original array. 2,532. It's greater than 2,000. So we need to change to this 2532, this guy that's in position 1 of the array. We need to change it to 2,000. See how it was changed to 2,000? See how some other number, this one, was changed to 2,000? We need to change it to 2,000 once we found it as an example of something that was over 2,000. Well, to change something, don't use the set method. That's for an array list. No, with an array, you can just do samples I equals limit samples I minus something. No, just change it to not 2,000, limit, which really is 2,000, but if you put a 2,000 there, then this method always works for 2,000 and not various numbers that could be passed in here instead of 2,000. So this is your incoming parameter there. So this is your code. Sorry for the sloppiness, but that's the basic gist of it. Hey, if you forget to put a semicolon on an AP exam, they don't care. But I'll put it there anyway since I noticed it. Now, I'm feeling pretty good about this answer, except I missed the whole values less than negative limit are changed to negative limit. So I'd probably lose a point or two because this is only half done. I'm glad I'm using pencil because I need to handle that other situation, and maybe we do an else if. Else if something is less than something, then samples I equals, and there are a couple ways you can handle this. Square brackets I there, sorry again for the sloppiness, that's an equal symbol and all that. I don't need curly braces here, there's only one line of code. I didn't need curly braces there. Okay, if samples I, I'm just going to use abbreviation here, SI. Now on the real test you would write that out. They would take points off shortly for that. And if it's less than negative limit, and yes, you can put a hyphen right in front of a variable name to change that 2,000 parameter will be turned into negative 2,000. It does work. And what do we want to do? Well, just like we set this equal to limit, we want to set it equal to negative limit. Or you can multiply by -1, or there are other ways to do that. Now we have all of the code inside this for loop. Hey, if I forgot to put the closing curly brace to this, they probably wouldn't take points off for little things like that. But I put it there. In fact, you don't even need this curly brace or this curly brace because this is all one statement, one if, else if. So all these curly braces inside here are optional. Of course, you do need these, but I bet they wouldn't even take off points if you forgot those. Because that's not really something crucial to the logic of this algorithm. There's no critical thinking involved in putting these two particular curly braces out here. Okay, I think we're finished. It's time. Oh man, we forgot to return what we were trying to return. See, we got some of this done. Check, check. All of this is done. And we made use of this parameter limit. And we changed those values. But we forgot to handle the return. How many times do we change something here? Well, every time that we get inside this if clause, we need to count up, count C plus 1. One way to do that would be to do C++. Semicolon, but I'm too lazy. And C++ here, every time we change it on the negative end of the number line. Okay, now we do need curly braces, because even though you indented, unlike Python or some other language, you do need curly braces to show that you have 2 or more statements in this clause and 2 or more in this clause. Okay, my curly brace there is off out of line there, so let's fix that. Okay, we are counting up the C++'s, and now we do need to return C. That is what replaces our original return -1. Okay, and move that curly brace down a little bit, and there is our answer for 1A. Now let's check the rubric that the AP people use when they grade this sort of thing. Here's the rubric. It was worth 4.5 points that year, question 1A. Did we identify elements of sample that, did we have a square brackets samples anywhere? Yes. So, did we access more than one element of samples? Yes, because we do I++, and because we have the I inside the square brackets, we do get that half point. So we got a half point. Do we get this half point? Did we hit every element of samples without going overboard? Yes, we did, because we stopped at length, and we have the less than. If you had a less than or equal to, you lost a half a point because you went a little too far. And if you didn't start at 0, if you started at 1 by accident, you'd lose a half a point. So we did all of that right. So we got that full point. Let's see, did we get these 2 points? Did we compare an element of samples with the variable, the parameter limit? Yes, we did. We didn't hardwire this with 2000, and we did compare it with samples square brackets I. So that comparison does earn us this half point. Did we change at least one element? Yes, we did. Somewhere in here, we did set samples I equal to limit. If you had this the other way around, or just some other strange thing with something equals something, I guess you wouldn't have got that point. Did we change all of the elements as appropriate to either plus limit or negative limit? Yes, because we used a for loop, we changed them all. So if you didn't use a loop here, if you only put if else if, in that case you were only looking at the very first position here. But you still would have earned 1 point here, half plus a half. You just wouldn't have gotten this second point. So you get a lot of partial credit even for missing major things like loops. And did you calculate and return the number of changed elements? That's what I almost forgot there a few minutes ago, to return C. I forgot to even put in the variable C++ in spots. So I would have lost 1.5 points. But because of the curve on the AP exam, and because they pretty much curve you 1 or 2 points for each of these free response questions, you might still get a 3 or a 4 on the AP exam if you miss whole things like this. And I told you to write the word return early on, even before you figured out what you were supposed to return. Well, you'd probably get a half a point for just returning your counter variable. For just doing that, you get a half a point. And anyway, we did this part as well. We did initialize and set that counter variable equal to 0, and we did plus it at the right spots. So don't forget to declare your variables and start them at 0 when necessary, and certainly remember to return them when the question has a return type like this in and is telling you in its post condition to return something. So there's your answer for number 1A. They do explain a lot of this on the College Board website, so let's review that. To get to this key web page, click on this link that's on my homepage. That takes you here. Scroll down, and we are in the year 2011. Scoring guidelines, that's where you go to get to that rubric I was just looking at. But you might also go to sample responses, question number 1. And here they tell you what things they take points off for and what things they don't take points off for. Here's that rubric again. Here is their official solution, which is very close to our solution. Instead of using C, they used the variable num changed. They use the word this in all kinds of places where it's really optional. Nobody does that anymore, in my opinion. And scrolling down further, you see students' answers from that actual test year. And look, wow, this student has good style and did pretty much what we did. This student right here, student B, he or she might have a small flaw in this. They put a 2000 in there instead of using the parameter limit. So they lost a point or so there. And anyway, below all of this, please read the nice little discussion commentary for question number 1 to understand like the reasons for doing things, and maybe you'll see why student 1A got more points than student 1B who used that 2000, for example. You'll learn a lot by reading these discussions on this scoring info page. Okay, well, back to the question here, wherever I have it. That's all I have to say about question 1A on the 2011 free response section of the AP exam.